Hello everyone, this is Pooka and welcome to another Pokemon TCG video, and welcome back to Building on a Budget, where we find inexpensive decks for new players to try to jump in to the competitive side of the Pokemon TCG. Now, in the past, Flareon has been the focus of many of my Building on a Budget videos. It is an uncommon card that packs a wallop, so we're going to use him once again, and he actually gains quite a bit of strength with the brand new set XY Phantom Forces. So let's take a look at this Flareon deck that I think is a lot of fun to play. So at the very least, you're going to have fun using this. So let's take a look at Flareon first. It has the attack Vengeance. That's the only attack we are concerned with. 20 damage plus 10 more damage for each Pokemon in your discard pile. So the idea of this deck, get a lot of Pokemon in the discard pile so that you can use Vengeance to do a lot of damage and eventually get one-hit knockouts. Seems kind of silly, but it's surprisingly effective. So for Flareon, he is the main attacker of this deck. In the past, he was kind of a complementary attacker. You would only use him at the end of a game when, your discard pile was building with Pokemon, but now he is the focus of the deck. You want to be attacking with Flareon a lot. So we have a 4-4 Flareon line. That means 4 Eevee and 4 Flareon Eevee. We're actually going to use this Eevee for this deck, the Furious Fists version. It has Energy Evolution. When you attach a basic energy from your hand to this Pokemon, you can search for the evolution of that type and immediately evolve Eevee. Now this means, yes, you can use it turn 1. Yes, you can use it immediately when you put it into play. That is the ruling. You can do that. So one of the biggest problems that this deck would face is a Seismitoad EX using that pesky Quaking Punch. Now Seismitoad EX is weak to grass, and it's a water type, so we happen to have a built-in counter to Seismitoad EX in this deck in the form of Leafeon. So with a grass energy, which we will play, alright, arrow's not being kind to me. Energy Evolution, if we put a grass energy onto Eevee, we can then instantly evolve into Leafeon and use Energy Crush, and then Leaf Blade is a decent option as well. So Leafeon, we're going to run 2 of those as well. It just makes sense to run it. It uses colorless energy. We can evolve right into it. Even against Seismitoad's Quaking Punch, we have an easy way to search for Leafeon, and it's just a great card to have in the deck. So 4 Flareon and 2 Leafeon. That's fine. But let's take a look at the reason why Flareon got so much better with Phantom Forces. Kind of got off track a little bit. It's going to be this card, Battle Compressor. So you get to search your deck for up to 3 cards and discard them. That means we get to search for all these Pokemon and plop them directly into the discard pile to fuel the fire of Flareon's Vengeance. So 4 Battle Compressor will allow us to discard tons and tons of Pokemon. You do need a lot of them in the discard to start getting one-hit knockouts, but it's very realistic with Battle Compressor. Besides Battle Compressor, we also have Ultra Ball. We have 4 of these. You get to discard 2 cards from your hand. So if you have a couple Pokemon in your hand, you can ditch them with Ultra Ball, and then, once again, makes Flareon's Vengeance do even more. We also have Computer Search. This is going to be our A-Spec card for the deck. Again, discards 2 cards. We can search for any card. So a lot of discarding in this deck. The entire point is to burn through your deck and make sure Flareon does as much damage as possible. So we've seen the main Flareon line. The rest are just kind of going to be role players. And, they have a purpose, but most of the time we are just going to chuck them in the discard pile. Let's look at Raichu first. Now, Raichu is a card that's been featured in a lot of decks. It has Circle, Circuit, Attack, Sport, Colorless Energy. That's going to be a theme in this deck. 20 times the number of your benched Pokemon. So this can do up to 100 damage, and it's very good against lightning-weak Pokemon, such as Yveltal EX and Lugia EX, and any other Pokemon that may be weak to lightning. Raichu is just a solid Pokemon in general. It can attack for just a double colorless energy, like most of this deck can. And yeah, it has a free retreat cost, just a solid card in general. So we're going to run a 3-3 line of that. We need to run a lot of Pokemon in this deck. I have 25 in here, as you can see right there. I wish there were 30 Pokemon in this deck, honestly, just so you could Vengeance for more damage, but we do need to run trainers and energy, I suppose. So we have Raichu, a 3-3 line of that, 3 Pikachu, 3 Raichu, and then we're also going to play Beartic. So Beartic has Igloo Hold, 20 plus 20 more damage for each colorless in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. Just a simple example here, Beartic has 4 retreat, so if you use Igloo Hold against another Beartic, you're doing 100 damage. This is very useful against Donphan, which has become very popular. You can knock it out in one hit with Igloo Hold. Very good against Landorus EX as well. Has some pretty solid uses. Fighting Pokemon can give this deck trouble sometimes in the early stages. Beartic is just a solid Pokemon to have on your side. Can also be used against Fire-type Pokemon, so just something else to keep in mind, such as Charizard EX or Pyroar as well. So Beartic, a 3-3 line of that as well. And then we have another few supporting Pokemon. First is Druddigon. This is not an overwhelmingly strong card by any means, but Revenge is just a basic Pokemon that can hit for 90 after you've been knocked out. Just a simple, basic Pokemon that can dish out some damage. Seems like a decent card to have in this kind of a deck. We're trying to run as many utility cards as possible, just a simple one-of card that can come in handy sometimes. Most of the time, we're just going to discard him, but sometimes, you never know, you might need your Druddigon. We also have one Audino. It's going to be used for its ability, Busybody. It has great synergy with Flareon. You get to discard it from your hand, and then you remove 10 damage, and then a special condition from your active Pokemon. So if Flareon gets damaged at all, or affected by a special condition, you can not only heal it off, you then get a Pokemon in the discard pile. Now, most of the time, Flareon's just going to get knocked out in one hit, so we only have one Audino. We used to run a lot more of those, but yeah, only one right now. And then our final Pokemon is actually going to be Jirachi EX. I try to shy away from Pokemon EX in these budget decks, but Jirachi is really good in this deck. Stellar Guidance just allows you to search for a supporter card, and there's no reason not to run this card in this deck. Basically, in really bad situations where all you have is an Ultra Ball, it can turn into your supporter, and it can save the game. If you don't need Jirachi, throw it away with Battle Compressor. Throw it away with an Ultra Ball. That's pretty much it. But I think it's definitely worth running. I know a lot of people hate running this card because it's an EX. It's really weak. It gives up 2 prizes. But it's going to save you more games than it's going to lose you. I guarantee you that. All right, so those are the Pokemon, all 25 of them. Again, we're just trying to use Flareon's Vengeance. That is the point of this deck. So we've already seen the 4 Battle Compressor, the 4 Ultra Ball, the Computer Search. Now let's look at some of the other cards we have here. Professor Sycamore is another way to discard your Pokemon. Discards your whole hand, you draw a fresh 7. This is the card you're probably going to be using most as your supporter, just because, again, it can discard your hand. Now, that can be bad sometimes. You can discard things like Double Colorless Energy that you don't really want to toss, but, that's just the risky nature of this kind of card. You have to play it. We have 4N, a staple in every deck. Each player shuffles in and then draws cards equal to the number of their prize cards. It's just a solid draw card, also a very solid disruption card. At the end of games, 2 Colress. Shuffle your hand in and draw a card for each player's benched Pokemon, so anywhere from 0 to 10. We only have 2 of these because it's not as strong early on in the game, but it can be very good later on once those benches start to get a little bigger. We have 1 Lysander, evil-looking guy, just brings a Pokemon off your opponent's bench up to the active spot. Very good for finishing off something and, going after a big Pokemon EX and winning the game. Lysander is a great card we see in pretty much every deck. We also have 2 VS Seeker. Grabs a supporter back. So this is really good in this deck to grab Professor Sycamore back. Keep discarding your hand. Keep getting Pokemon in the discard. Just gives you more flexibility with your supporter cards. And then also 2 Bicycle. Just an item card that allows you to draw so you have 4 cards. Gives the deck a little more speed. And then Silver Bangle is really cool in this deck, since it adds 30 damage to your attacks when you attach it to your active Pokemon against Pokemon EX. And those are going to be the things that are tough to knock out in one hit. Instead of needing 3 additional Pokemon in the discard pile, we can use Silver Bangle instead to do additional 30 damage. It ends up working out very well. So we have a couple Silver Bangle in here just to help us reach those big numbers against Pokemon EX. And then our final card is Escape Rope. It's just a card that forces both players to switch out their active Pokemon. We'd like to have at least one switching card in most decks. And Escape Rope is the one I'm going to try out in here. You could play a switch instead, but I like having the option to force your opponent to switch out their Pokemon as well. Our energy, very simple, 4 double colorless energy and then 4 grass. That's going to seem like it's really low, and it is. It's just enough. I would say 8 energy is just enough if you play them correctly. You do have to worry about things like Enhanced Hammer and Crushing Hammer, but I would say 8 is probably perfect. 9 would probably be a little better, but, you want to fit so many cards in this deck, you got to make room somewhere. So here is our budget Flareon deck. I went up, added the prices. I used trollandtoad.com and coolstuffinc.com as my 2 guides, just to give a rough idea of what things would be worth if you bought all 60 cards of this deck, built it entirely from scratch. I mean every single card, even that grass energy. This deck would cost you about $90. And I know that sounds expensive. Pokemon cards have gotten more expensive. Unfortunately, the staple cards, the Ends, the bicycles, the computer searches, those cards have gotten more expensive because they haven't been printed in a while, but that's just the unfortunate nature of the game. If I put a number on how much the Pokemon cost you, that's $30 for all 25 Pokemon. That's ridiculous. That's under $1 for every card. It's the trainers that add up to about $60. That's where the bulk of your money will go when building a deck these days. Unless you're using those big Pokemon EX, the full art ones, the expensive ones. The most expensive card in this deck, believe it or not, is Computer Search. It's about $15 right now, which is pretty silly. That's how much you have to spend on a trainer card, but that's just the way it is. All right, so there you see our budget deck. Now let's see it in action. Well, you can see I'm not making all this stuff up. Flareon is a cool deck. The list is actually going to work. I promise. So let's go ahead here. We're going to start off with an Eevee, and it looks like we're going up against a Xerneas. So right off the bat, I can see it's going to be some kind of a fairy deck. And I don't know exactly how my matchup will go against this fairy deck, but guess we'll find out. So let's go ahead and start off with an Ultra Ball. I'm going to discard Leafeon and Raichu, and then we'll try to figure out which Pokemon to take. Again, your goal is to just try to get a ton of Pokemon in the discard pile, but this deck can be a little tricky sometimes. You want to get Pokemon in the discard, but you can't burn all of your Pokemon too quickly, otherwise you run out of Pokemon to attack with. So there is a balance you need to find. It's going to take a little effort to try to figure out how to play this deck properly. So right off the bat, got the Professor Sycamore. We already got 3 Pokemon in the discard pile. And we got a Battle Compressor. We're going to get 3 more Pokemon in the discard pile. So I'm just trying to see how much of each thing do I have left. If I have uneven lines left, I'll discard the extra. If I have cards I don't think will be very useful in this matchup, I'll just discard them. For example, I don't think Beartic will be entirely useful against a Fairy deck, mainly because they use Fairy Garden, which gives them free retreat, and that means Igloo Hold is going to do a whopping 20 damage. So I feel very comfortable just ditching the Beartic altogether. We're not even going to bother putting him into play. My opponent starts off with a Pokemon Fan Club, and we'll see what he gets with this. Can obviously get 2 basic Pokemon, and I'm going to assume a Spritzee and then another Pokemon. I don't know what that other Pokemon will be, but I will find out shortly. A Spritzee and a Spritzee. Didn't see that coming. Ooh, a different Spritzee, too. 2 different kinds of Spritzee. Oh, man. Okay, so pretty solid start for my opponent. Probably what he wanted. You know, Pokemon Fan Club turn 1 and the Geomancy getting 2 additional energy into play. So beautiful start from the opponent. Exactly what he would have wanted. Perhaps would have liked a few more Pokemon to put into play, depending on what kind of version of the deck this is. Maybe Kangaskhan EX would have been nice for my opponent, but oh well. So here I have a decision to make. I could Lysander and bring out one of those Spritzy and just knock it out. That is option number 1. Option number 2 is to N. Option 3 is to be super aggressive and play Professor Sycamore. And you know what? I'm going to be super aggressive. I feel like that is the way to play this deck. And it did not really pay off right there. But I do feel like that's the right way to play this deck. I do have an escape rope I could play and bring out one of those Spritzy and then knock it out with a Flareon Vengeance. But I feel like going after Xerneas is probably a little more useful. Taking out one Spritzy for one prize, not going to do much. I would rather just start attacking the Xerneas. It's a threat. I can get more energy in play, so let's deal with it right now and just start using Vengeance. So a turn 2 attack for 90. That's pretty average, I would say, with this deck. Anything more than that, that's incredibly good. We certainly could have gotten up to 130 damage if we drew the right cards, but, I mean, that's a little much to ask for. We are burning through the deck quite well, though, so I'm not going to complain too much. Here is an N from my opponent, so we'll both get a fresh 6 cards after that. And I guess we'll just have to see what kind of other Pokemon come down. There is Kangaskhan EX. So this is indeed a Mega Kangaskhan Aromatisse deck. I am very familiar with this deck. Have used it quite a bit. So I know exactly what this opponent will be trying to accomplish. You know, wants the Mega Kangaskhan up with a 230 HP. Wham, bam, punching. And that's going to be really tough to deal with. You'll need so many Pokemon in the discard to deal with Mega Kangaskhan. Oh, man. Okay, so we just see another Geomancy there. Nothing too fancy. And I get the Flareon down with the second energy. I'm just going to go ahead with an N right there. Bench another Eevee. And we can take the knockout here with a Vengeance for 90 damage. So there's our first prize. Hey, I'll take it. Turn 3, we've taken a knockout. And you can notice I did not bench Cubchoo. I did not bench Jirachi. I definitely don't want to bench Cubchoo. I want to throw it in the discard pile. Don't want him in play. Any Pokemon in play will not go to the discard unless it gets knocked out. So just be wary of that. Do not put down Pokemon if you plan on, well, wanting to discard them later. Now we are running a little slow here. We've only found one Battle Compressor so far. Only use one Ultra Ball. We have used a couple Professor Sycamore to try to burn through cards, but it just hasn't resulted in a lot of discarded Pokemon. So this is going to be an interesting game. See if we can get some kind of explosive turn soon where we discard a bunch of Pokemon, because we are running a little slow. I would have hoped to get a few more Pokemon in the discard pile that turn. We didn't get any in the discard that turn, but hey, we'll see what happens. Looks like my opponent is doing something a little weird, promoting the Toxicroak EX. Don't see that card in these decks very often. Looks like a triple poison is on the way. I gotta wonder why my opponent just wouldn't X-Ball in that spot. Get a knockout with Mewtwo, but we do see the triple poison, so I don't know. I will be triple poisoned. There is that. Okay. So here I have 3 Pokemon in my hand. I have that Colress. You could play that for 6 cards here. I don't think I'm going to do that. Again, we're just going to be super aggressive, burn through our deck. That's VS Seeker for the Professor Sycamore, and discard my hand once again, getting 3 more Pokemon in the discard pile. So, we draw Battle Compressor. We draw 3, count them, 3 Ultra Ball. And in this situation, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 Pokemon in the discard pile. That means Vengeance is doing 120 damage. Well, let's Battle Compressor. We can turn that into 150 damage. So at the very least, I could retreat and use the Flareon with a Silver Bangle and certainly get a knockout this turn. I'm going to try to reach a little bit further and see if I can't get a knockout with the active Flareon. So I am going to Battle Compressor, discard Cubchoo, Raichu, and Pikachu. Choo, choo, choo. The train is going. And let's see, we have Audino in there. So this should be... all right, let's count once again. There's a lot of counting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 Pokemon in there. So this is actually going to work out. Check this out. So we Ultra Ball away Flareon. There's 14 Pokemon in there. Busybody, 15 Pokemon in there. And Vengeance for 170 damage. That was a turn where we just put 8 Pokemon in the discard pile. 8 of them. Vengeance was doing 90, and then all of a sudden it's doing 170. This is insanity. And we are looking in great shape at this point to just keep using Vengeance until we win. That looks like that's what's going to happen here. We just have the offensive firepower at this point to keep getting knockouts. I mean, we're going to knock out any regular EX, and eventually I should be able to knock out even Mega Kangaskhan EX. That's how crazy this is right now. So, I mean, this is kind of a strange deck because, you know, when you discard this many Pokemon, you actually don't even have 6 to attack with. So in that sense, we used to see Koffagrigus in this kind of deck with 6 feet under, since giving up the prizes didn't really matter. You would only have 4 Flareon to attack with anyway. So there may be some merit to playing that again, if you just don't have enough attackers over the course of a game, but I do like this version as well. We'll see if we can close the game out. We had to discard 1 Flareon early. Here is an X-Ball, going to knock out Flareon. That's my opponent's first prize of the game. And I'm just going to send out the Eevee here. Going to send out the Pokemon that has the double colorless attached, since it could get enhanced hammered away, and I don't want to see that. And I do have an Ultra Ball. I'm probably going to play that just to see what's left in my deck at this point. We'll discard Pikachu and then Colress and see what is in there, just a Leafeon. So I actually don't think I want to discard Leafeon. I have 1 Eevee left. May as well give myself a chance to have 1 more attacker in case something really goes wrong. I'm not really sure how things would go wrong at this point, but I'll just keep my options open. Might as well do that. So let's drop down the Grass Energy, take a look at what we have in there. Pretty much all good stuff is left at this point. We have Computer Search, we have N. Well, N's not going to be good anymore. We have a Bicycle, we have a VS Seeker. I mean, we have tons of good stuff at this point. We have all sorts of things to work with, and a Vengeance blows up that Mewtwo EX. Poor guy, never saw it coming. And at this point, you got to think, Flareon is just doing so much damage. How can he be stopped? I don't know, folks. He is a wrecking machine, and there doesn't seem to be much my opponent can do about it. So here we see the Ultra Ball. We might see a Mega Kangaskhan EX. My opponent may try to, put the big wall up there and just try to buy a turn. If Mega Kangaskhan doesn't get knocked out in 1 hit, I mean, it can roll through with some max potions, healing off the damage, but if you look at my hand here, I think we're going to get a knockout eventually. And end of 1, we got a Professor Sycamore, it's all good. And I think this is just a matter of time at this point. Flareon is knocking on the door, saying, hey, I got some vengeance. It looks like a triple draw from my opponent. I'm going to go with the Battle Compressor. We'll go ahead and discard as many Pokemon as we can. Let's see how much damage we can do here. Silver Bangle, and let's end the game with a Vengeance for 250 damage. This uncommon card for 2 energy just did 250 damage, not even with weakness. If that Pokemon were weak to fire, it would have done 500 damage. Just let that sink in. So Flareon is a lot of fun. Again, a pretty solid budget option if you don't want to break the bank on all those expensive Pokemon EX. It's just, you're going to have a ton of fun playing this deck. I do. I love playing this in my spare time. It's just so much fun to discard all those Pokemon and see the numbers go bigger and bigger. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will certainly have some more for you soon. I am Pooka from the Top Cut, and I'll see you guys next time.